The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local journalism today at chly.ca/donate. Local news doesn't survive without local support.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. Decades of contributions to Nanaimo's history, theatre, and music scenes have been recognized as the city announced a trio of Culture Award winners this week. Brian McFadden, Leon Potter, and Luis Poretta are this year's recipients, and we'll hear from them on today's show. The Culture Awards have been awarded annually by the city since 1998. Recipients are selected by City Council after a community nomination process and a review by a panel of various community stakeholders. The awards will be handed out at a ceremony this April at the Port Theatre. Winner of the Honor in Heritage Award for 2026, Brian McFadden is a longtime volunteer and current president of the Vancouver Island Military Museum located in downtown Nanaimo. I spoke with him Tuesday. What was your reaction when you found out you'd been recognized by the city of Nanaimo? You're winning this Culture Award.
Well, first of all, I was surprised. Secondly, I would prefer the museum to have won the award. I'm just one of many volunteers who are at the museum and have served in the museum for many years as volunteers. And so any success that I've had or the museum has had is really due to all of the folks that work there.
And what's your story with the museum? How did you become involved? When did you first get involved?
I first got involved when I retired in Nanaimo in 1996. I come from a military family. Most of my family served in the armed forces. I'm from a family of four boys. Three of us served in the armed forces. As a matter of fact, I have a granddaughter who is officer in the Royal Canadian Navy, serving in Victoria. So when I retired, I wanted to find something of interest to do, as many people who retire do. I'd always been passionate about military history, and I discovered the Vancouver Island Military Museum in Nanaimo. And there I joined a like-minded group of people. That would be in 1998 as a front desk volunteer. In, I believe it was 2006, I joined the board of directors and took much more interest in the planning of the museum going forward. 2010, just prior to our move to the Centennial Building, I became vice president. And that really has been my role up until this year when the board of directors elected me as the president. And so that's really my story as to how I joined the museum and where I am today in its history.
You've been involved with the organization for 28 years now, doing the math, and it sounds like you've done just about every job or been in just about every role that a person can be in with an organization. Over all of that time in all of those roles, what have you seen as far as the impact of the organization on the community?
Well, I think what I've seen is certainly from the visitors are quite surprised at the amount of material that we have amassed with respect to the Canadian Armed Forces. We get visits regularly from many organizations, schools, pretty well all of the youth organizations, great many people traveling across the country. In fact, this year we've seen a major increase in international tourists and people who are interested in military history. They seek out facilities like ours across the country, and of course they tell us how we compare with other military museums. And I can tell you that it's very, very favorable. And so that's really the thing that I've noticed over the last, certainly over the last couple of years. The number of people that have now recognized the Vancouver Island Military Museum as a source of information which showcases really the history of Canada's military, which is a very proud one.
And how about what this organization has meant to all of the people who have been volunteering at it over the 28 years that you have been there? And to yourself, what has this all meant to you?
Well, it's given me an opportunity, I think, to explain to those who perhaps are not familiar with Canada's role in the world in military history. It's something that I'm passionate about, and all of our volunteers feel the same. We think that we have a story to tell, and it's our job to tell that story and to make people aware of just how important. I'm not saying that we should glorify war, which we don't. Military history covers everything that's been happening in the world, not only in the past, but today and will in the future. And so I think that's the role that we play in making sure that people know just how much we are respected as a nation throughout the world.
How do you approach that idea or that distinction between commemoration and glorification, and maybe like with that whole idea in mind, just kind of putting in context the significance of the military to the world today?
Yeah, well, you certainly hit it on the head. Nobody glorifies war. We commemorate the people. And that's the thing that we try to emphasize at the Military Museum. We don't have a war museum. We have a history museum. And it's the history of people, how they coped with the trials and tribulations. And that's very important. Canada has never declared war on anybody. We've always been drawn in to help other countries. In the First World War, Second World War, right through to present day, where Canada is heavily involved in the Balkans. And that's important, that we step forward. I think we need to tell people that we step forward. The men and women who serve in the Canadian Armed Forces are probably some of our finest citizens.
Do you have a favorite maybe story that you've uncovered or thing that you've learned throughout your time working as a volunteer at the museum?
The number of local people that we have recognized, the things that they have done. And I don't think we tell our own story enough. And that's something that of course, we try to do. We have quite a storied military history in Nanaimo. We had a camp here during the war where thousands of soldiers were trained. It was from places like Nanaimo, where Canadian soldiers were sent to Alaska to repel the Japanese who had landed in the Aleutian Islands. We had an underground nuclear bunker in Nanaimo, which very few people know about, which was one of several across the country that would have protected government officials, medical people, in times of, heaven forbid, that we had a nuclear explosion on the west coast. And Nanaimo was chosen, and we had a bunker for that. These are things that most people in Nanaimo don't know about it. And it's our job to tell that story.
In late 2024, the city of Nanaimo signed a co-management agreement with the Vancouver Island Military Museum. Up to that point, it had been entirely run by volunteers. The agreement means that there are now staff working at the museum, helping to secure its future after the current generation of volunteers are no longer able to continue on. I asked McFadden about that change. When you got to the point that you were able to get this more formal co-management agreement with the city of Nanaimo, did you feel like the reward that resulted from a long journey of stewardship over decades of work, was it kind of like a light at the end of the tunnel? Just what was that like for you after putting in several decades as a volunteer to see that?
Yeah. Well, it was certainly was a great feeling, but not only for me, but for all the people that had worked at the museum, because our aim was what happens as we age out. All of the work that's been performed, all of the hours, as you say, that have been put into it, has to be for something. And the gratifying thing was that the city of Nanaimo recognized that we are an asset to the city, which is the aim that we've always had. That was the light bulb moment for us when we realized, after all the work we've done and what we've been trying to achieve, we've reached that stage where all of us can leave contented, retire fully, and know that it's in safe hands and its future is secured going forward. That's been the goal all along, and I think we now have all of the pieces in place to achieve that.
And the city, like you say, recognizing the work and the importance of the museum to the community, and then now also more recently, recognizing your contributions specifically. Congratulations, Brian McFadden, again on this Culture Award.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Brian McFadden is president of the Vancouver Island Military Museum and winner of the City of Nanaimo's Honor in Heritage Award for 2026.
Midcoast Morning is part of our nonprofit newsroom project, supported by listeners like you. Keep this program on the air by funding it today with a monthly sustaining donation at chly.ca/donate. We've got tote bags and shirts if you need an incentive.
The City of Nanaimo is recognizing a trio of citizens for outstanding contributions to the community's cultural fabric. Each of Brian McFadden, Leon Potter, and Luis Poretta have spent multiple decades making an impact in their respective fields. Now, the three have been named winners of the city's 2026 Culture Awards. Potter is receiving the Excellence in Culture Award. The longtime VIU theater prof stepped out of rehearsals on a mounting of Cyrano to speak with me about the honor.
My name's Leon Potter. I'm the chair and theater manager at the Vancouver Island University theater program. I am a director and a designer here and teach the acting courses.
And you're the recipient of a Culture Award from the City of Nanaimo.
And apparently the recipient of the Excellence in Culture Award, which is surprising and wonderful.
Yeah, what was your reaction when you found out that news?
Shock, to be honest. And if you want the truth, my imposter syndrome kind of kicked in a really heavy way, and I was like, "Are you sure?" So yeah, I was very flattered and really honored.
Could you tell me about maybe the theater scene in Nanaimo and the role that the program at VIU and your work kind of has in that scene?
So the program, the way the program works is that this is one of only two programs in Canada that actually trains inside of a working theater, which is actually really nice, and gives students a chance to work with members of the community as well as on our own productions. And so what ends up happening is we end up becoming we end up becoming a sort of a part of the community itself as well, rather than an isolated training, right? So our students are often off working in various departments and then talking to us about the work that they're doing. And then, we can help out here, there, and everywhere, wherever we go. So between that, as well as last year, I was working with the BC 55 Plus Games as the Director of Culture and Events, doing the opening ceremonies. And I was adjudicating for the North Island Zone Festival. And so there's a lot of sort of fingers in in and around the community wherever we get a chance to.
And you shared that a big part of the theater scene now is there are people who you have taught, who you're still in touch with, who are now working in different aspects of it. Can you talk to me about that cycle over the more than 2 decades you've spent? How many folks you have seen come through under your tutelage and then now continue to work in it?
It's actually really exciting because you do keep in touch with, especially now with the age of social media and such like that, right? It makes it much easier. You keep in touch with people who you've trained and who you've worked with, who've gone on to do all kinds of things. They're directors here and artistic directors there, and actors over here and technicians over here and designers and whatnot. And what's really lovely is the opportunity. So, for example, there's a number of drama teachers in the high schools that are around that have come through the program. And I think I've been here long enough now that many of them have gone through classes that I've taught. So it's a great chance to chat with them and talk with them and go to the high schools and do little workshops and chat and talk with them that way, or host things like the North Island Regional Drama Festival, like we do here. The truth is that I love what I really love what I do, right? I adore this. This is, I count myself extremely lucky that I get to make a living doing what I love to do.
What kind of role do you think theater holds in what I'll call the cultural fabric of Nanaimo?
I'd say it holds an extremely important role. And it's not just Nanaimo. I call it, like, when I think of the theater scene, I sort of take it as all of North Island, right? Everything above the Malahide, just because, when I was adjudicating the North Island zone, last year, there was this incredible community of people from all over that really supported each other and worked on each other's shows and were constantly trying new ideas and pushing the envelope and talking about things. And it was great. It was fantastic. It's an extremely important part of the cultural fabric. And it's a very rich one, right? The North Island Regional Drama Festival that they host here for the high schools is one of the most well-attended and richest I've ever seen. I think it's brilliant. And I've worked, and I've adjudicated festivals and workshopped a number of those programs sort of all over BC. And this is definitely one of the richest ones I've seen. It's incredible here. So there's a really rich community, a very rich theatrical community here in town. And I think it's great. I think for the most part, it plays an extremely important role, though, as well, because it creates community and connection, which is one of the richest parts of the theater scene, no matter where you go, because it's that connection with other people on stage and that live connection with the people that are in the audience, which, especially in a digital world, is becoming more and more important.
What do you think you want Nanaimo's reputation as a place for the creative arts to be? Like, when people think of Nanaimo in the context of theater and of art, what are you hoping that comes to mind for them?
Welcoming would be the first word that comes to mind. I would hope that it is welcoming and that it is a place where people can step into a scene and try things that they may not have tried before. To work to discover talents and passions and ideas and thoughts that they can bring to life on stage.
You've been at this for more than 2 decades here at VIU. If we were to flash forward 2 more decades, what would you hope to see from theater at VIU? What's your ideal vision for the kind of impact it will have in, my goodness, what would that year be? 2046?
2046. If I'm still around, I think it would be really nice to see it just become more. I think it's on the right. The truth of the matter is that I think it's really on the right track right now. And if anything, I'd love to see it become more of grow on what it's already building, which is a really strong connection, like a really strong program that gives people opportunities to explore what they might be good at, what they might find that they're good at, explore that creative side of themselves, discover an element that they might not have considered in the past, or even just even if it's just gaining skills that will strengthen them in the future, whatever direction they happen to take. I think that if anything, it would be great if it was, I think we're on a good track. The truth of the matter is, right? Like, we're not a big department. We're quite small. There's 3 of us here, but the truth is that it's actually quite strong in what we deliver. And I'm pretty proud of it, I'll be honest with you.
Well, Leon Potter, congratulations on getting that recognition. Congratulations again on the award.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your call.
Leon Potter is chair of the Vancouver Island University Theatre Program and winner of the City of Nanaimo's Excellence in Culture Award for 2026. Like Potter, Luis Poretta has spent more than 2 decades promoting the arts in Nanaimo. In his case, the focus is jazz music. In a release, the city cites Poretta's Quadwrangle music productions with creating meaningful opportunities for local and emerging artists while bringing acclaimed performers to the community. It also says he's known for his generosity, mentorship, and tireless volunteer efforts. And you can add humility to the list as well, as Poretta told me his reaction to learning he'd won the city's Honor in Culture Award.
Taken by surprise to receive this honor, as I can honestly think of about 100 people in this town who deserve it more than I do. But it's very nice to have been honored with it. My part in bringing art and culture to Nanaimo is really in the form of jazz music, which I've been recording, promoting, and hosting for the last 20-odd years, 23 years really. Really, when I started this, bringing jazz shows in, we started at the Lighthouse. There was very few venues around town that were interested in taking jazz music. So, we had to build up a kind of an interest in it. But what we find now is, Nanaimo's always been a jazz town. Some of the finest jazz musicians in Canada have come from Vancouver Island, and a few from Nanaimo too. But they've very seldom had venues that they can express themselves in, and so we try to offer that to them. And what's happened is that the whole thing has grown. Now you've probably got 4 or 5 venues around town now who are regularly hosting jazz bands, either local or we tend to bring in a lot of touring bands.
What got you into the world of trying to promote the jazz scene here in Nanaimo in the first place?
Well, I'm a musician myself, so I started off in the progressive rock thing in the late '60s, and then I developed to play jazz guitar. And I knew a lot of musicians here. I had a very good friend, Jeff Bowen, who's now retired, but he was a drummer here, and we got together and decided to start putting shows on. And we had a house band at the time. That would have been Pat Coleman on guitar and Kenny Lister on bass and Jeff on drums. And then we used to bring in hosts, Hugh Fraser, Ross Taggart, these musicians from out off the island. We used to bring them in and front them, and we began to generate an interest because of that. From that point of view, it's just gradually developed. And, together with all of the teaching that's gone on here at the university, it's very sad to see the program going down there, because that program produced some of Canada's finest jazz music.
Yeah, could you give me more of a sense of what you have seen and what you maybe anticipate the impact of VIU not having a music program anymore is going to be, and kind of your work and the work of the community to try and respond to whatever those effects are?
Big question there, but what I do think is that where jazz and classical music is concerned, generally it's grant funded, and the problem is that with governments being stretched for cash these days, what we're seeing across the whole of the Western world is that these grants are diminishing. And with that diminishment, you're going to get less musicians that are able to develop and grow and develop. We've come up with a scheme which we're working on at the moment that's a scheme that could be set up in any town here in Canada or any town or city in Canada, which generates its own funds, and it will raise finances for the arts and culture in any particular term. So we're working on that one at the moment. So we don't have to rely on government money to survive. But, we can generate these funds within the community that can be used for the community, rather than to have to, bend the knee to the grant suppliers.
In the 20 years that you've been doing this sort of work promoting jazz on the island, what have you seen as far as the ability of local musicians to be able to have a go at it and play jazz and find venues and maybe earn some money doing it?
Yeah, well, as I say, that we're really, really lucky on this island because we've got some of Canada's finest jazz musicians here, almost within 5 miles of where I'm standing now. I could pull 5 really top grade players. I mean, in North America, not just in Canada, but the finest players in North America here. So we're very fortunate. It's been great to see some of the younger guys coming up. I remember Kaylee Borstein used to come into my store. It's been great to see her growing, and she's become a tremendous tenor player. And, it's been great to see some of these young people grow up into fine musicians, and they're trying to hold their own in a very, very difficult situation.
So having said that and having presumably, put in so much work yourself into this over 2 decades, how is it to get this kind of recognition from the city in the form of this culture award for the work that you have done?
Well, Joe, it's wonderful and a real surprise to have received it, but this isn't false humility. I honestly know so many more people who are deserving of this that are working in the shadows. It's an award that I'm very happy to accept on their behalf too. So I wouldn't do this if I wasn't enjoying doing it. It is a labor of love, but it is a labor of love for me to do this, and I'll continue doing it as long as I can stagger around. But there are some very, very hard-working musicians and promoters and in the town here, I'm quite sure, deserve this more than I do.
Luis Poretta is winner of the City of Nanaimo's Honor in Culture Award for 2026 for his efforts promoting jazz music in the community for more than 20 years, something he does through his company Quadwrangle Productions. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and RB Frew is our technical advisor. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. You can get in touch with us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
This program gives thanks to the Nanaimo First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.